Hi, my name is Elyce Tate, and this is a video for those of you who are interested in learning more about the Trail Guide to Learning. In particular, if you are interested in sitting down with it and kind of learning about what it looks like a little bit overall, but in particular as it relates to what a day might look like if you were using it. That is primarily the question that we get that most of us really want to know. So we thought we'd make a video. A little bit of background for me. We wanted to do this mom to mom. I have used this curriculum twice with two sets of children. I have 4 children, ages 20, 18, 14, and 12. I was good friends and was really mentored by one of the main authors, Debbie Strayer, before her passing. And it is a joy for me, truly a joy for me to share about the Trail Guide to Learning and to explain, why it means so much to me and how to use it so that others can benefit. Why I love the Trail Guide in particular is really a couple of reasons. One, I had a toddler, a preschooler, a 3rd and a 5th grader when I started using it, and I was really looking for a solution to just being really spent and stressed out. Trail Guide is very well organized, very well laid out, very low teacher prep. Second, I really liked it because it was a way for me to join all of my children in school. Obviously the preschool and the toddler were not really doing so much of the school, but now that we have a younger extension, my preschooler at that time could have done, perhaps the kindergarten extension. But I love that they could sit down with us, and as we did the readers, read together and listen to Big Sister and Big Brother as they did their school or did a science project or joined in an art project or something like that. One of the main reasons I really love the Trail Guide to Learning series has to do with the fact that from beginning to end it was created with critical thinking in mind. It is really important, it was important and is important to me as a mom that my kids are not just learning for the sake of knowledge, but that they're learning to critically analyze and process the information that they're learning, and that's encouraged throughout the entire Trail Guide series and from every subject matter. I love that the subject matter all tied into one another, and that also supports, that unified approach supports how to critically look at information and then tie it back together. So without further ado, let me take a few minutes and just, as if I were sitting down with you inside a homeschool convention booth, walk you through how to use the Trail Guide to Learning. So I will first encourage you, if you have not done this, to perhaps, if you don't already have the curriculum, to print out. If you go on the website, there are several opportunities to print out sample lessons, and if you can print out a sample lesson before you sit down, it will make a little bit more sense to you because you'll be able to look at it as I'm kind of explaining in general. Even if it's not the same lesson or the same unit, you'll be able to see kind of what I'm talking about when I refer to the different sections. The first thing I would do, if you already had purchased the Trail Guide series, I'm going to go over, just so you know, today I'm going to go over the Paths of Exploration, which is the first in the series. I'm going to go over that. So if you have any other, it still will work because the general principles will be the same, but some of the subjects and titles and headings will be a little bit different. So if you have the Paths of Exploration, what I encourage you to do is get it out and sit down as I'm going through this video. If you do not, that's okay. Just use those sample lessons and kind of follow generally along, or maybe refer after you've watched the video. The first thing I would do if you purchase this curriculum, and I talk to a lot of moms who I reference back to do this. We often buy curriculum, but we don't sit down with it for our own benefit before using it with our kids. I really encourage you with the Trail Guide to Learning to pick it up, and right in the beginning of the curriculum, it's so helpful that the author included a preface, an introduction, lesson content, and resources. it is very, very beneficial to read through and get the big picture. And in the lesson content, she breaks down readers, read alouds, copy work, gives you information that's very helpful to learn about before you actually do it. So the first thing I would do when I get the teacher manual is to do that. Let me walk you through what a day might look like. Now you'll notice with the Trail Guide series, the authors were kind enough to, instead of labeling day and week, they labeled it lesson and part. That was very intentional on their part because they did not want you to feel the pressure to do this in any other way other than whatever works best for you. So the unit, there are 6 units in each set: paths of exploration, paths of settlement, paths of progress, and the journeys to ancient history. Journeys is the ancient history curriculum. There are 6 units. Each unit is also broken down by lesson and part. A lesson ideally might look like a week. It has 5 parts. So if you wanted and you had a teacher's manual, whatever you have, whether it be the sample or the teacher's manual, go ahead and take a look at that. If you look at lesson 3, part 1, for example, in unit 1 of the Paths of Exploration, that is the Columbus unit, and it's the 3rd lesson, which might look like the 3rd week if you were doing 1 part each day. Now, another thing I just want to encourage you, use this as it works best for you. It might not work best for you. You might need to take more than a day to finish some of these parts. You might take less if your children are working at a pace that you feel like they're ready to do a little bit extra. That's totally fine. Work as what's best for you, for your child, for your family. So when you're starting lesson 3, part 1, remember it has 5 parts. So part 1, part 2, part 3, and part 4 are full lessons. Part 5 is created to be a review lesson. So lesson 3, part 1, for example, every lesson begins with what Debbie has called, what the authors have called, steps for thinking. These steps for thinking are to be read aloud to your children and kind of remembered throughout the week. These steps for thinking are kind of like a backbone, if you will, tying together the main themes of the lesson, and you will revisit them and you will think about them throughout the week, again beginning with the critical thinking skills. The next thing you might do is the copywork or dictation. So there's copywork or dictation for every day. Again, you do what's best for you and your children. With that said, I definitely encourage, if dictation is not where your child is, let them do copywork and maybe take 1 day a week and work on the dictation skills. I think that's really important to not kind of give that up totally, but some kids it can be a little bit stressful to be writing what we're speaking, and so that option again is up to you, but you can do copywork or dictation. I do want to say as well that these are for 3 grade levels, ideally. The paths, the series is written, each one, the Paths of Exploration starts with 3rd through 5th grade. So if you have a 3rd grader, a 4th grader, or a 5th grader, or working at one of those levels, what you'll see in the manual are different prints. There are different paw prints, and I don't think I can show that really well. There are different paw prints for each grade level, and you will find whatever grade level you're working at and do match with the paw print, and the children will learn this, to match with the paw print what will work for their level, what their assignment is for their level. So they'll find their level for the 3rd grader, find their level if you have a 5th grader as well, and do each of those. Now, it's intended that the 3rd grader would do 3rd grade level, and then if you have a 5th grader, ideally they'll be doing all of the work. So if you have vocabulary, they'll have a little bit more vocabulary, or if there are questions, they'll probably have 1 more question, or there might be a question that's just specific for the 5th grader, if that makes sense. So they'll be working by their own paw print. The student notebook pages that accompany this curriculum come on a CD, which you can print yourself, and those paw prints will have just the right amount of work. So if they were to write a certain amount of vocabulary words, or write an answer to a question, or draw something, there will be the right amount of boxes or lines or whatever for that paw print in those student notebook pages. So the student notebook pages will tie in with the curriculum nicely. So a day might look like starting with the steps for thinking on the first lesson. Then you might have copy work and dictation. After copy work and dictation, you might have a read aloud. The read aloud for the Christopher Columbus unit is, the reader. I would begin with the reader because that gives your child the opportunity to be the first one to read. With the reader, there are pages specific to what they are to read. Sometimes they're not ready to read 2 pages. Maybe they can just read a paragraph or 2 paragraphs and work towards reading entire sections. Usually it's just a couple of pages, especially as they're starting out in the lower levels. So after the the reader, then they will do their read aloud and discussion. That will be another book. Often that other book, if you have 2 children using the curriculum, I had a 3rd grader who I had read the reader, and then I had a 5th grader who did the read aloud. There are usually accompanying different questions, or they're being asked questions, or they're being asked to come up with a question that has something to do with the read aloud. After the read aloud, you'll see that there are various word study, vocabulary, spelling, various language activities. They will again have these student notebook pages that will coordinate, and often they will be writing the vocabulary, or writing the spelling, or writing something that has to do with word study. And often the word study words will come from one of the readers, the reader or the read aloud. Usually if it's a 3rd grade level, it might come from the reader. If it's the 5th grade level, it might come from the read aloud. The copy work, read aloud, readers are all pretty consistent, and word study, our language, are all pretty consistent. What will be intermingled will be the science, art, history, geography, and things of that nature. They won't do history every day. They won't do science every day, geography every day. They're interchanged so that they get about 2 days of each per week. So in this particular lesson of Columbus, in lesson 3, part 1, there was word study that had to do with picking words from their book and practicing the sounds E, E-A, and E-E. They had a geography lesson, and they were able to finish with an art lesson. That was for part 1. Part 2 would have the copy work, again the reader, the read aloud, word study, which was a different word study. They would have geography, and there's a lesson for writing. Every single lesson includes a time for independent reading and review of their work. The average amount of time that it takes is a big question that I get. The average amount of time is about 2 to 4 hours, really depending on so many factors. The lessons some days are a little bit longer than others. Obviously, the time that your children take to do things is different than other children, but on average, I would say it shouldn't take you more than about 2 hours or so. If there's a particular project, a science project or an art project, of course it depends again on what the project is and how your children are enjoying the lesson as to how long that might take. I wanted to highlight a couple of other things. So in part 5, so you've done part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5. It fits really nicely into a Monday through Thursday and use Friday as a review day. But again, sometimes your weeks get off because of holidays or sickness or something like that. So it doesn't always work that precisely. But on part 5, depending on what you do that day, I used it. Sometimes we just did a simple review, and we had, co-op, and we didn't have time always to do these extra activities. But I get a lot of questions that have to do with is there any ideas for extra projects or extra work? There are included every single week extra projects. It's called the enrichment section. So the enrichment section has ideas both for maybe books to read, things to do as research on the internet, independently, projects, things to build. This one here says there's a project to read Carry On Mr. Bowditch and to investigate navigation and learn more about navigation, because that was a big deal, obviously connected to the Unit on Columbus. There are a lot of games. I want to also say in the review day there are a lot of games. There's bingo, there's crosswords scrambles, and all kinds of fun ways I think that we forget as moms. We may not always appreciate. I think I learned through Trail Guide to appreciate that games are fun and they're a great way to learn without the kids knowing that they're learning. It was awesome. So that is included always in the review. So there's games in the review. As they review their vocabulary, as they review their spelling, they'll be reviewing other important topics. The enrichment activities, again, have to do with reading a book, watching a movie. Maybe there's a particular movie she gives as additional resources. Contact your local weatherman or visit the Weather Channel website for information on hurricanes, hurricane making charts, and things of that nature. So great ideas every single week for how to take this a step further, to take some of the knowledge of any of the subject areas that they might have been interested in and go a little further, do a little bit deeper knowledge. This is also great if you have older kids who are using the supplement. I had an older child who was using it, and often I would throw in and say, hey, once a week, pick an enrichment activity in addition to all the other work that was going on in that lesson. So in addition to the enrichment and the additional resources, there is also an answers section if there are any questions that are asked throughout the lessons or the parts. You also have a section where they have answers to those questions. In the very back of the book, there is also an appendix that I think is super, super helpful. Many people forget this is back here. I think it's just a hidden gem. There are two things that you will find. One is a unit summary that has a chart broken down by lesson, and there's also a checklist that enables your child, if you print it off and put it with their lesson for the week, they'll be able to check off and to see what they've done and check it off. And it's something that you can check as well. You don't have to create a checkoff list. It's already done for you. Included on the checkoff list is their time of independent reading and review for each and every day. So really, the authors thought of everything, you guys. This is such a wonderful, wonderful gem. There are also assessments for those of you. I feel like because we're working with them so closely on a day-to-day basis, I think we know what their capabilities are. We know what they know and don't know. But for those of us who also appreciate having the little bit of extra, an assessment is available, so you can purchase that on CD and print off the assessments at the end of each unit study, out of each 6 weeks, and give that to them and just kind of have some fun with helping to see what they remembered. I think that is about all. I think I've covered it all. I hope that you have the opportunity to look through the sample lessons or the teacher guide and just get more information. Again, feel free to reach out if you have further questions, but I hope that you have the opportunity to use the trail guide and enjoy it as much as I did.